an original.
From Story Studio Network.
Well, here we are. It's Wednesday, the 11th day of October. Welcome in. It's Now and Next. I'm Dave Trafford for Story Studio Network. And it really does feel like fall around here now, right? For about, I don't know, seemed endless. Was it going to be 25 or 30 and sunny? But here we are. It feels like fall. Colors are lovely. Venturing up and down the Don Valley Parkway the last few days, and boy, that is a treasure. If you live in Toronto, what a gift. You know, the valleys that the city is built around. It's just, you know, gorgeous real estate to watch, and the colors right now are terrific. So appreciate it. I know it might be a bumper-to-bumper ride on the parkway tonight coming home, but you get to watch the colors, right? There you go. All right. This is day 5 of the war between Israel and Hamas. Latest numbers, at least 1,200 people killed in Israel, more than 1,000 killed in Gaza. The bombardment in Gaza is relentless by the Israeli forces. Of course, now Hezbollah is sticking up its head in Lebanon, complicating things even further. Spent some time yesterday talking to Phil Gursky at Borealis, and he is a career intelligence analyst. Spent some time with CSIS, other groups like that, watching the comings and goings, particularly of terrorism. His insights were really interesting. If you missed yesterday's show, I'd encourage you to go back in the feed and put an ear on it. And the dance we do around the language of terrorism. Hamas is a terrorist organization, yet we in the journalism world call the individuals militants. And logically, I understand why we do that. Because terrorist, freedom fighter, whatever it might be, loaded words. It suggests you're taking a side. But it's pretty hard to watch what's going on in Israel right now, and Gaza for that matter, and not realize that, that's terrorism. And even when you watch some of the coverage, the reporters who are there, and their response to what they're seeing, they're having a really hard time, some of them, holding it together, reporting on it. And let's face it, that's their gig. They do war zone stuff all the time. You got to be a certain kind of personality and character to be in a war zone as a correspondent. And it's easy to say, well, you're just there to watch. No, there's a lot of trauma that goes on there as well. And it's showing itself on the air with some of them. So if they are responding in the moment in a live broadcast setting like that, my spidey senses as the news guy are thinking, oh man, that's got to be really bad. Really bad. It's worse than any description that they could give you in their reporting. Their emotional reaction to it and trying to keep their shit together tells me more than their reporting, and that's not a criticism. That's kind of where they are. I've got an appointment with Reverend Michael Corin later today. Michael and I have known each other a long time. And I follow him on social media and read his pieces and wherever he's publishing, the Toronto Star, etc. And he is always a lightning rod for all kinds of spirited conversation, shall we say. But when we were both at CFRB, 15 years ago or so, and all hell was breaking loose in Lebanon, Michael was over there reporting on it, and he's been there more than once. But I thought his perspective would be pretty interesting on this now. But originally I wanted to reach out to him because he had written this really compelling piece about sort of the years after the Troubles in Ireland, and how we look at Ireland and think, it's solved, everything's fine, everybody's happy. And Michael was there recently, I guess, and realized you don't have to go very far before the sort of this sectarian violence and hatred rears its head in Ireland. That, depending if you're a freedom fighter or, again, we're back to labels, what side you were on, that was a neighborhood by neighborhood battle often. For what? Now, it's easy for us to say that, for what? Because we didn't live there, because we didn't put up with it, because we didn't see what happened. We didn't fully appreciate and experience it. But Michael was there reporting on it years ago. Anyway, I just thought, we think it's okay in Ireland. And I think a lot of times we look at what's going on in the Middle East and thinking, okay, nobody's blowing themselves up or blowing others up. Must be a good day. And we kind of took it for granted. I'm not saying we're to blame for it. I'm just saying it's too easy to kind of lose track of how fragile some of these things actually are. So we'll be talking to Michael later today, and if all things are if we're living right, we'll bring you that conversation tomorrow here on Now and Next. It was a full day yesterday. Busy. Had my head down in here early, got the show going, talked to Phil, had a whole bunch of stuff to catch up on with the team at SSN, had our team meetings, had a strategy meeting where we're very excited about our Echo project in North Bay. That's on the front burner as well. Anyway, looked up at about, 5:45. I was getting ready to join the folks on CTV News Channel to guest on Mike LeCouture's show, The Debate. And I thought, look at that. The RCMP is getting into Doug Ford's business. And I don't know why I'm surprised, but I was a little surprised. Oddly enough, it was always a possibility, and boom, now it's there. And to be fair and to be clear, there ain't nothing to see until they actually conduct an investigation. All they have said is that they will conduct an investigation into what went on in the Greenbelt. So I thought, yes, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it, obviously, on Friday on The Ledge. Your Ontario Politics podcast will be all over it. John Wright, Keith Leslie, and I. But this is happening right now, and there's another layer to this story that affects not just the Greenbelt in terms of the initial scandal, but we talked about this last week on The Ledge. There's the Greenbelt 2.0 and how it affects some municipalities. So I thought, you know what? Let's go right to the ground in the municipality and talk to Laura Babcock. She is the president of POWERGROUP Communications and is a Hamiltonian who is watching what's going on at Queen's Park from there, but also brings some important insights into how this is playing out in Hamilton itself. So let's just do, as they would say in the newsroom, the TikTok on this, shall we? Well, let's go back to August the 1st. We have the report from the Auditor General here in Ontario, concluding that the lands removed from the Greenbelt in December 2022 were not chosen using an objective, transparent selection. Okay, the system was corrupt, and everybody admits to that. Less than a month later, the Integrity Commissioner comes out with a report and says effectively the same thing, that there was even more detail, more granular reporting on the comings and goings, and that there were broke the ethics rules, etc. Still, the Ford government stood its ground. But a couple of days later, Steve Clark steps down as the housing minister. In the meantime, even before that, his chief of staff had been, he stepped away from his job. Since then, we've had the reporting on the Las Vegas trips, the lobbying that went on there, in quotation marks, effectively around a massage table. I just still don't quite understand that. And then the resignation of some key players in Doug Ford's immediate circle, and the premier walking back his plan to move lands out of the Greenbelt on the 21st, I think, of September. And here we are on the 11th day of October. And the ink is still wet on the story that the RCMP has decided that they are going to launch a formal investigation, a criminal investigation, in what went on with the Greenbelt land swap. Laura Babcock is here from Power Group, and we just, one of the things, to say you've been vocal on this would be understating it. Because, I want your take on this as the comms brain on this right now. That intensity and the momentum behind this, I heard you say this morning on the radio, it's time for the Ford government to get out in front of this. How can they possibly do that? This wave is just rolling over them.
Well, I've made the comment that they keep kind of tripping over themselves. They've not been able to get ahead of this, and they keep putting out these statements that they can't live up to, Dave. So from a comms perspective, yes, I have been relentless. I'm doing this just voluntarily because it was summer when we heard about this egregious corruption that was happening in the process. And that upsets me as a former journalist, right? It's like, wait, you're doing what? You're giving out land deals how? Many of us have family who might have had Greenbelt lands that were protected that never got to develop them. And here Ford's buddies get to make these phone calls and hand these packages and get this kind of payout. I mean, it's gross. And so whether you're an environmentalist or not, the Greenbelt has to upset you and what they were allegedly trying to do. And so from the very beginning, from a comms perspective, I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep driving this Greenbelt scandal hashtag because I know it's a huge scandal. Like, you know how it is, Dave, when you've been in the business for a while. I've been out of it for a while, but you know the makings of a huge scandal. It has all the elements, right? Including the early obfuscations and denials and poor messaging, housing, an easy disprovable claim. No, you don't actually need to build houses there. You just don't. The numbers don't support it. And then, those houses aren't going to be the houses Ontarians need, and we're not going to get them for decades. So every time they tried to push these different narratives, they failed. And then I have absolute trust in my housing minister. Well, yeah, but then he lawyered up on the Friday and was gone on the Labor Day Monday, and you're reshuffling your cabinet twice in 2 weeks. So, I mean, the momentum of this scandal, early on, for many of us, we saw it, and watching them constantly trip over themselves. And I said this morning on the radio, they just put out a statement last night saying that they will, play along with all investigations. They'll cooperate, and they have no tolerance for wrongdoing. And really, you're going to cooperate? So every single minister who might have a lawyer who might say don't comment or put up any other kind of legal protections, what are you going to do then, Doug Ford? You're going to say you're out of my caucus because you're not cooperating with any investigation? I mean, it's as though they keep thinking they've got a handle on this, Dave, and they don't. And statements like that are going to blow back up in their face like all the other statements throughout this thing. And we're only getting started. I mean, is Doug Ford going to cooperate with handing over his cell phones? Because so far, that hasn't been something that they've been willing to do with other requests, right? So at what point are they able to stop this? I don't think they can now, Dave. I was just making the point that the same hubris or the same belief that the people of Ontario are fools, or that we'll get back to work and get back to, Halloween candy and forget about this. It's crazy. We are watching what could be one of the biggest scandals in Canadian history. And and right now in Hamilton, there's a huge piece of land that also looks as though it was part of the Greenbelt, 2.0, happened at the same time that we're fighting to get back. That the mayor of Hamilton, Andrea Horwath, actually stood up and said, "Stop messing with us." Is Hamilton Council, like we've said on the O Show, going to say, "No, we're not servicing that land. Forget it. It's not going to happen." What happens with Ontario Place, Dave? Does that deal go through, or do we put some kind of a hold on that because there might be corruption rife through the Ford government? So, this thing is massive. So they can't get ahead of it at this point, but they can stop doing these unforced errors and these self-inflicted wounds by putting out statements that aren't going to make it a week.
Yeah, I think I can't imagine what's going on in Doug Ford's head right now, and let's for the benefit of the doubt, suggest that this worries him at least, because the reports are clearly that he is cranky. He's taking it out on staff. It's happening, all over the place. And I asked the On the Ledge crew a couple of weeks ago whether or not he's got the stamina to stick with this. Because 2026 sounds like a long time away, and that might politically be good for him, but it's a long time away to be actually treading water, right? So I don't know if he's got does he have the capital to stick with it?
Well, there are two different things, right? Does he have the stubborn stamina to keep professing he's for the little guy and he, blah, blah, doesn't accept any wrongdoing? Does he have the stamina personally to keep pumping out that pablum? I think he does. I think he comes from a political family and he's ridden through some big scandals. Does his cabinet, though, does his caucus have the stamina for the damage that Ford's brand is doing to them every minute, right? Like we saw Monty McNaughton take the parachute out on that weekend. What did Monty know was coming, or what did he want to save his brand from? He says it had to do with family. It wasn't connected, but the timing of it sure looked bad for his boss. So as we're watching these cabinet ministers leave or get put on ice because of their cash trips to Vegas for joint massages, it is a mess. And if I had a brand like the Mulrooney brand or some other brands that are around Ford, I'd be asking myself, is this the legacy I want attached to my brand permanently, or should I be getting the heck out of here? And so then the question becomes, how many of them feel that way? And does Doug Ford need to fall on the proverbial sword for the team? So he might have the stubborn stamina, but does his party have the ability to withstand this pressure? And you heard Merritt Stiles say on my O Show with her a couple of weeks ago, that she could see on their faces how unhappy the caucus was and how relationships had been changing. That camaraderie, even with the opposition, seemed to have dried up. There was a lot of pressure there. And now you've heard her say, just I think yesterday on the radio, that ministers don't want to sign things. There's this almost like a paralysis of the Ford caucus and the ministers, because how do they go forward? How do they know what's going to come out? How deep this investigation with the RCMP is going to go? Can the RCMP stretch it out to the Ontario Place if they find evidence that there was stuff going on there with the 413? So, they are not a government that is going to be able to operate effectively. So whether Ford has the stamina or the stubbornness, or whether the rest of his caucus is like, you are a toxic brand to this party's future and to our reputations, you got to go. We'll see.
Take me back to the point you touched on around Hamilton and the province forcing the boundaries out, sort of taking in some of the farmland. We talked about this last week as well, but I'm curious to know at what point city councilors in Hamilton saw the light. Because this has been going on, it was more than a year ago, I think, when it really was part of the conversation. The government stepped in, did what they were doing. What was the light that went on that said, hey, hang on, this is really more of a problem? You used the phrase Greenbelt 2.0. What was the feeling in Hamilton around
that? there were a couple of councillors, to their credit, who immediately were in Greenbelt rallies, because Hamilton has a fierce urban boundary protection organization right on the ground. 30,000 Hamiltonians had to connect with the previous council to get them to maintain the urban boundary. So it is a well-organized resistance to urban sprawl in Hamilton. And they got that giant victory after much fighting, Dave. And then all of a sudden, they find out that Greenbelt lands, they're up for grabs, right? And this other big swath of land, somebody called the minister's office and said, I want that land. Oop, okay, there you go. There's the land. So, I mean, for Hamilton, many councillors, 4 or 5 of them, were on this from the get when the Greenbelt announcement came out. But the mayor was absent. Andrea Horwath wasn't even at the city hall meeting about the Greenbelt, the big protest. And we had the Mayor Burlington on our front porch, but not our mayor. So there has been this weird lack of engagement by Mayor Andrea Horwath. And all the best I could get out of people was, protecting relationship with the provincial government or whatever. Now that this has come out about this other piece of land and just how easily a third party, who we think we all know, called and said, I want that big chunk of precious farmland from Hamilton. Now the mayor is in it to win it, it looks like. So does Hamilton now have the power to say we're not going to engage with the provincial facilitator now that there's an RCMP investigation with this government? We're not moving a thing in terms of municipal, process on this. We're not going to give these lands the kind of support that they need. We're not going to let it get through the red tape municipally. Maybe that's where we're going to go. So it really was it was really when Ford gave back the Greenbelt lands that I think Andrea Horwath was able to see that the tide had shifted. If she is one of those politicians that checks the wind changed significantly, as we know, when Doug Ford did that Thursday mea culpa 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And now she looks like she's got the grit to fight this. But it will be mostly a council-driven initiative to stop this grab for sure.
So just if I understand you, then their posture will be just to sit on it. They're not to move anything, not to go forward with, servicing the properties, et cetera. That would be their
It's possible.
strategy.
I mean, I interviewed a councillor on the O Show who is putting that kind of messaging out, right? Has been very defiant. And his comment to me on the show was that he's in a position to be able to do that, because he's not the mayor. But then we saw Andrea Horwath's thing about stop messing with Hamilton when that story came out about how that land was taken out the same day as the Greenbelt stuff was being done. So, I mean, there's a righteous sense of indignation there. These developers have been working around Hamilton for a long time. Many of us know the players in the Greenbelt scandal, right? And so, there was a city councillor, Dave, that actually quit before the last election because of the abuses against planning staff by some developers. So, Hamilton, this stuff isn't a surprise to us, and it ain't new. But the mayor's more vociferous standing up about it is new. And I think there will be certainly a feeling around the council table is, maybe death by delay, maybe obfuscation, bureaucracy. I mean, there's lots of little tricks you can play if you don't want something to happen. We see it all the time. So will they have the tenacity to not let these lands get taken? I think they'll have the public behind them if they take that position. And will they get punished by the premier in other ways? Quite possibly. But when you're dealing with a mercurial premier, I mean, at some point you got to stand up to the bully.
So is, from your perspective then, Horwath's position on this, was this willful blindness to begin with, or was it one of these things where I better get on board now because everybody else is rowing in the same direction?
I don't know. I mean, we've been playing the Where's Waldo, Where's Mayor Andrea Horwath game for over a year. We finally started to see her step up this fall and be more vocal about things and be more present on various issues. So I'm hoping maybe she's got her feet under her now. I don't know why a career politician who'd been a city councillor and been the leader of the official opposition provincially needed a year to figure out how to speak up for Hamilton, but now she's doing it. I don't know, though, from the record that I've seen, that she does much more than, vocally oppose. I think it's going to be a much stronger push from councillors who are much more invested in the fight, who care a lot more about the Greenbelt. I mean, some of them literally ran and came from environmental backgrounds, right? So there is a strong Hamilton council that maybe can, help this mayor use her bully pulpit. But I don't expect that we're going to see Hamilton Council just say, yeah, fine, developer, that's possibly been a thorn in our side for decades. Go ahead, take that farmland while Ford's under investigation. I mean, why would they? There's chum in the water, as John said this morning, right? So why on earth would Hamilton just say, yeah, no, you win, go ahead, take that, even though none of us want it and the process stinks to high heaven?
Yeah, well, and to complicate matters, I mean, she does have the strong mayor powers, so there's that part of it. But last time you and I sat down to talk about these things, we were pondering, what was it going to be like in Toronto with the NDP Olivia Chow in the chair. She had, and I will be the first to admit, I came out and said, Toronto doesn't need Olivia Chow right now. I think she's proving me wrong, to be honest with you. She's actually made inroads. She's been able to do with Doug Ford what clearly Horwath has not been able to do in a very short period of time. So it only amplifies for me the misgivings and the missteps of Mayor Horwath.
Do you know what? I'm not partisan, right? So I don't judge a leader by the letters behind their name, their party affiliation, right? I mean, if you wanted to do that, you could look at Bob Ray. Is he a liberal? Is he NDP, right? Like people flip around. I look at the character of the person, the hard work they put into it. And Olivia Chow always struck me as a very hardworking, very focused, ran a very professional campaign. So I'm not at all surprised, whatever letters are behind her name, that she's become an effective mayor. I mean, while we were still trying to find Andrea Horwath, Olivia was already taking meetings, right? Yeah. So, I mean, the juxtaposition between the two, it's embarrassing for Andrea. And that might have promoted some of her. She went on a horrible trip to Italy that just blew up. And when she came back, we saw a difference. So it could be Olivia Chow working really hard and showing up other mayors. It could be what happened with that public relations disaster that happened in August. But either way, she's more engaged now. Council's more engaged. And it's kind of hard, even though she missed some of these huge meetings that happened even this fall on the Greenbelt, when you've got 1,000 residents showing up on a weeknight to just watch a city council process meeting, that the public is behind this, right? So I don't think you have to be brilliant to read the tea leaves in Hamilton and to realize that you need to get on this, that, the time for kind of avoiding the drama where being conflicted versus over. Take a position, your city's behind you. I just want to say, though, that Merritt Stiles, as a leader of the opposition, compared to what Andrea was able to do, different circumstances. But boy, have we seen from Merritt a level of engagement and clear-mindedness and diligence on this. I've been extremely impressed. So again, it's not the letters, it's not the party you belong to. It's your willingness to work hard and take a stand. And we wouldn't be where we are if Merritt hadn't gone to the other parties at Queen's Park and gotten them all to sign on to that AG request, right? Because then it was bipartisan and it had incredible teeth in this whole scandal. So, I hope Andrea Horwath learns from Merritt, learns from Olivia, and actually fights the fight.
Laura Babcock, thanks for joining us. It's always good to have your fiery insights on this stuff. Thank you.
I have to have more of my Tim Hortons coffee. All right, thanks. Right. Bye.
Yeah, it's always good to have Laura on the show. And yeah, if you want to check out her site, she does the O Show, and the O stands for opinion. And as you can tell, it's not just kind of some thoughtless opinion. The opinions that she's bringing to the game are always considered and challenging. Yeah, and what I like about it is Laura's prepared to be challenged. And that's kind of what's necessary in these kinds of conversations. So, but interesting to hear, right, how the locals in Hamilton are looking at Andrea Horwath, who just swept into power, into the mayor's chair in Hamilton, pretty much unopposed, and has done nothing since then. So, just kind of an interesting juxtaposition when we watch, again, as I said, what happened here with Olivia Chow, et cetera. So thanks to Laura. And again, we'll suggest that you go over and check out her O Show. And you can probably find her on, best to find her on LinkedIn, Laura Babcock. And you'll be able to make connections with all of her platforms. She's pretty active on Twitter as well. So, or X, I guess, we're all being corrected. X. So, all right, that'll do it for us today on this 11th day of October. For now and next, I'm Dave Trafford for Story Studio Network. Tomorrow, We'll talk to the Reverend Michael Corrin right here on Now and Next.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Now and Next is produced by Becky Coles. Our production manager is Jamie Nickerson. Audio editors are Mike Trutler and Drew Garner. And our sonic logo designer is Greg McDonald. Our executive producers are Dave and Aaron Trafford.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.